What's up, guys? It's me, Jesse, and we are back with more Tower of God content. This is probably the 20th time or so I've had to record this intro, but I am so excited to bring everybody the 100 subscriber special. That's right, guys, we finally hit 100 subscribers. That bongo hit was probably really loud at the end. Thank you guys so much for supporting all my videos thus far. It really makes me happy to see people interacting with this type of content. I really hope I've been able to not only entertain you and you know, make you laugh a little bit with these, but also maybe even slightly broaden your perspective of Tower of God as well. It really is such a... It has infinite discussion potential. It is one of the most analyzable works. There is most analyzable works of like manga that there is, in my opinion. There's just no limit to what you can talk about in the world building and the character motivations. So for a 100 subscriber special, I thought it would be nice to showcase my top 100 favorite characters. And so before we get started, I want two things in the comments. One, what are your top 100 favorite Tower of God characters? Let's see them. Let's see those full lists. And also, what do you guys think is going to be like my top 3, 5, 10, you know, however much you want to spend the effort to guess on. Based on the other analysis that I put forth so far, you know, who do you guys think I'm going to like the most? And we'll have some fun seeing how that matches up with how this list plays out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Hold it right there, Boss Jesse of the past. We're analysts, not animals. We need to set up a methodology for this ranking. There are going to be 3 rules that come into play here. Number 1 is that I am only referencing content from the free chapters. I do not want to spoil anyone that doesn't pay for Fast Pass or Korean Raws. Number 2 is that I am using a tier list linked in the description to pull my list of characters from. That means there are a couple that I forgot about until I had already made the ranking. I'll list them in honorable mentions and give them a hypothetical slot to be in. Number 3 is simple enough. If I like them, they are higher up on the list. So without further ado, let's actually get started. Kicking off this list at number 100 is White. White fans, sit down. He is the bottom of the top. I have mixed feelings on White. Essentially, he's a fallen god trying to regain his power, but SIU keeps trivializing him and never really gives him a chance to show off. He doesn't feel dangerous when other high rankers are always around to stop him, but he does still have a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see where he goes in the future. Now, Gustang sets up huge implications for a lot of the plot, but as we've seen him so far, he also just acts as a sort of mission control for Bomb. Really just spouts a lot of cool lines like a bug is a bug without doing much at all. He's immensely powerful, of course, but he made the arc more boring for me, the Floor of Death, by returning the souls so easily. I still get why he has fans. He has the suit, he has drip, he has a dumb haircut in the Floor of Death, but his first haircut is cool. This guy said a bad word. And honestly, in Tower of God, if you say fuck, that's enough to get on this list. Miayum's a fun character who takes pride in her role as the wandering minstrel, but also does a good job portraying the perspective of the average clueless data human, and showing how lost they are without big breeders or someone else to guide them. Monkey Man, Punchy Man, Snipey Man, Big Man. I do have a thing for Kurodon. I like how, even though he's a huge guy, he's still a clueless idiot, and he adds humor to the Woolhike song group and is dynamic with Evan. Now, Vicenti has drip. He's a good counterpart to Akeen. Still motivated to take their father's head, but he has a more tempered and thoughtful personality to combat Joaquin's impulsiveness. Unfortunately for him, we can see how it was also Joaquin's rashness and bloodlust that allowed him to gain dark power rather than Vicenti himself. I don't think Vicenti will become a Slayer anytime soon. A devoted soldier, she shows remarkable courage in the face of danger, and is our first exposure to the Ari family. Graceful and confident, without the need to flourish like their white-haired counterparts. Now, despite being one of Tower of God's most powerless characters, she still shows courage and protects Misang, and helps bring Horiang out of isolation in the workshop. Repeliste is one of the story's greatest mysteries, and is able to pull the strings of people as powerful as her other sisters, and even indirectly Uruk Mazino. I'm highly anticipating the event she was so patiently waiting for. Shunhua is an unfortunate soul, used to illustrate how vicious Andraste can really be, but representing the nobler side of the fisherman's struggle. Andrassi's curb stomp of him shows the hypocrisy of thinking one can be noble in their climb up the tower, and sadly his jobbing is genetic, as we'll see further down the list. Oh, Yama. His transformation makes him look like a Final Fantasy ripoff. Him fucking off to take a nap during his tribe's most important culture festival is the main cause of Tower of God's worst arc, but damn if he's earning his stripes lately. Though I think he had a really crappy introduction, I've enjoyed him a lot more lately, and his rage towards Ysracha has really given him a welcome drive. The High Priest of Zahard's altar. I love how neurotic this guy is. You see the beads of sweat on his forehead and understand the weight of Zahard's orders, but you also have to appreciate his ability to control the spread of information, and his desire to protect my boy, Charlie. Ron May has a fun dynamic with Varagar, being the more playful of the two and adding the spirit to their scenes together. She's essentially his mouthpiece, but her airheaded attitude, combined with a secret perceptiveness, make her more than meets the eye. Luch gives an interesting perspective on rebellion, as a member of the Great Families. In contrast to all of FEG's fanatics, Luch has never truly believed in his rebellion, and treated it as a hobby, just a pastime. He played it safe and lived thousands of years to regret it. I think that's pretty interesting. A mysterious regular who never quite lived up to his potential. I always liked his go-with-the-flow vibe, and I think it's hilarious that he literally always could have escaped during Dollar Show, but didn't, because he probably thought it'd be an inconvenience. Man just rips through the bars with absolutely no effort. From this point on, I officially, definitely like every character on this list. Tal tells Jordan that he's an idiot for following Yama while Yama is lying on his ass sleeping while the cage is about to be overrun. Tal actually wants to make life better for the Houndborn. I like Tal. Lore. More like Snore. It's a shame we haven't seen more of him since the workshop battle, but he's always proven himself a perceptive and capable ally. I'm hoping that SIU one day brings him back as a pinch hitter to get Shibizu's team out of dangerous situations. I love the comedic journey of Lulu of just going up the chain and getting in way over her head, then stumbling through the total minefield that is the cage. Her pragmatic approach is an introduction to the idea of selfishness that underpins Season 3, starting at its most basic and materialistic level. Hashtag girlboss. Look at him. They're sexy. The tower is a place where hard limits are encoded into regulars, but Hatsu tries to break that rule with excessive training, showing that it is possible to turn the tables within reason. Though his desire to become a great swordsman doesn't really align with most other narratives in the series, his interest in White may be guiding him down a path that could put him in conflict with more righteous characters down the line. Data Zahard is a great example of how to make a character look so stupid you forget he commits genocide in the future. But his humorless and edgy attitude reflect a hidden emptiness from fulfilling a purpose he can't truly believe in. He no longer feels alive and dutifully controls the hidden floor, just waiting, in his words, for a new adventure. I wish more emphasis was given to the monster inside him, and he gets off a little easy, but his dialogue with his older self is a real treat. Ha-Jin Sung is definitely an interesting character. From the perspective of the tower, he's an ancient monster who once killed members of the Great Family on sight. But to Bomb, he's a father figure who brought him clothes, funded his escapades, and ultimately supported a degree of freedom. Unfortunately, despite his wishes, it's only a degree of freedom. Make no mistake, Jin Sung holds incredible power over Bomb. Ultimately, he's still using him for his goal, and his fatherly act is something we're told much more than he ever demonstrates. This man is insane and unpredictable. The only man not afraid to have Caliban on his ass. Nobody knows which side he's on. It's implied his power is overwhelming and he's manipulated Luch for centuries, but is he truly destroying one of Zahard's cores for the sake of the army itself? Or is he plotting something behind the scenes to help one of his father, his father, his Pobido father, or will Caliban beat his ass before we ever find out? Oh wait, maybe the Pobido is the mother. Despite being a simpler character, I like that as one of the first branch heads we meet, he exemplifies the pride of the Lo Pobia family. Takoko looks down and sneers at the Houndborn and views them as subspecies. You get this colonial vibe from him, and it's very satisfying to see him struggle and fail against those he looks down upon. Pedro the Death Eye could make it on this list for the mustache alone, but I love the authority he exudes on the Hell Train. Despite wanting to revive White, he has no issue toying with Joaquin and making him play games. He showed no fear challenging Yuri, and even though he was easily clapped, he never lost his cool. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Mule Love, who takes his anger out on regulars and has trouble maintaining his work-life balance. He's hot-tempered, dynamic, and his moves are filled with speed. He's the progenitor of one of Bomb's coolest techniques, and he's the perfect opponent to test Bomb's resolve, as he can't bring himself to look past his personage as a Slayer candidate on the 20th floor. Half witch, half bitch, even Evan himself isn't so cranky. Though it's a shame SIU destroyed her lips. She and Kel have cool teamwork with their misdirection, and despite being a guide, it's fun to watch her suffer through trying to get anyone to actually listen to her directions. She perfectly embodies how capable anyone who isn't Hua Ryun is in this story. The Hell Train arc gave us some of the tower's biggest personalities, but also some of the biggest bodies. Pharaoh Barrow, better known as Candy Turtle, is large and in charge. Her sugar charge is a fun take on the lightning pill, but it's her attitude that I love. Her bluntness is welcome comedic relief, and I love her rage against Buelsar, and it even comes in handy when bringing Yiwa back to her senses. People tend to find her useless, but she brings a lot to the table. Is he a man or a weapon? Kasano himself can't decide, and it's tormented him for as long as he's been in the story. He lets himself be used so he can one day get his revenge, but he knows deep down it's simply the only way he can feel any purpose in his life. He can't believe he was loved, and can't bring himself to face the consequences of his actions until Wangnan finally strikes a deal with him. I hope we get one more arc to conclude his story. My angel. My jiggly-thighed angel. She's sweet, and I love her. I hope her hands get better. Charlie oozes swagger. A new ranker showing plenty of promise, his confidence gives pause to the other regulars. Unfortunately, he's the butt of everyone else's joke. Give Bomb a power-up, and this supposedly elite ranker is helpless. I'm actually a little sad he's shifted into pure comic relief, but he still works. He could have been a highlight of the last station, but he's just as fun as a part of the Alter Trio. White noise is also a cool technique. Criticizing Yuri automatically puts you in the top 100. Despite what I believe is an underlying envy towards her younger sister, Cheonhee is absolutely right that Yuri's reckless behavior makes her appear irresponsible and whimsical. Besides her battle horn in the nest, I like her design, and her connection with Calivan perfectly demonstrates her dutiful and loyal character. This man is actually the most swag character in the Tower of God. Code alone gets him past rank 75. His plot hook with his missing painting is very intriguing, and I wish it was followed up on. It would have been cool to see him work with Rachel, since we don't exactly get the best impression of him in his intro. He's a free spirit who appreciates the beauty in everything, even Barrow, but is quiet and slightly melancholy due to the events of his past. This dude's a piece of shit, and I love it. He's the perfect example of the false peace of the walls, and his self-serving rule allows us to understand why both Calivan and Bomb are so eager to cause trouble here. Lilial may be an insane and callous princess, but she brings a dynamic energy to the NHS, and brings out Andrassi's good side, reaffirming her loyalty to Bomb. She's the establishment to Andrassi's rebel, and we get to see just how cunning she and her sister are as they manipulate Kaiser for their own selfish purposes. I cannot wait to see her and her dynamic physical fighting again. The Hell Train squad has a lot to offer, but Akka's learned to cope with the loss of Rowan by taking others through the train and defending them to make up for not being able to protect his companions. He's able to see through Boro and bring out the best in his old team as they fight Anna and her puppet. It's easy to see he cares a lot about his teammates despite their constant squabbling. Aguero's sworn enemy presents the constant fear that the sins of his past will one day catch up with him, which is of course never brought up again past our mini-arc. Kazea reminds us of Aguero's devilish side beyond his smug boasts, and that he was actually able to destroy lives and manipulate his own family members. Fat chance he could do that now. Her rage towards him introduces the possibility of tons of tension if he ever sees his family again, and the fact that her programming will never let her get past her rage also introduces her to a sad and somewhat sympathetic fate. Clown Helm, an enigma on the level of Yama and Evankel, is perhaps one of the most cowardly characters in the tower. So smug, so eager to destroy the lives of the Houndborn, the smallest hiccups in his plans cause him to freak out and bring back his PTSD of when he fought Zahard. He can't come through when it counts, and that makes him truly pitiful. Yuri may be a reckless and annoying idiot. I actually forgot Yuri was in the top 100. Yuri may be a reckless and annoying idiot now, but in the first half of the story, she was an anchor for Bomb, someone we knew would force her own way through the complex injustices of the floor of tests, and look tirelessly for Bomb when she lost him. She's built up very well throughout Season 2 as we waited for her to reunite with Bomb, but unfortunately it's just been so long since she's faced any real challenge. I'm holding out a lot of hope that SIU will take her in a good direction now that she's meeting Zahard or his people. On the surface, Evankel looks just like another battle maniac, but if you look deeper, you'll come to realize that's entirely correct. Though the pachyderm within seems a noble soul, Evenkel herself lives for the fight. Though some could interpret this as boring, it really works for her since she's powerful enough to always move things along. She's not one to get bogged down, and we can count on her to create decisive outcomes and fodderize anyone reckless enough to go against her. Oh, speaking of fodderize, this guy damn near takes the cake. Poor guy thought Cherry River would save him. He's another loudmouth, but he's set apart through the little details, like his fiancée, or his determination after being disarmed to fight with his claws instead. I hope he's alive. Eternally depressed, distrusted, and ostracized, it's easy to sympathize with her and understand how Calivan could tempt her with her sister's reawakening. She shows us the pain of a forgotten history, as she's the only one who remembers Dawan's sacrifices. This led to her manipulation, a deeper examination over how much suffering one can take before they're forced to make a selfish choice for their own good. Speaking of suffering, I haven't seen this much screaming from children since the Tomato Town Massacre. Nia plays his role exceedingly well as a fearful victim who perpetuates his own suffering by roping Wangnan into his own devices. He was the least likely traitor, but his punishment reminds us of the sacrifice demanded by the Tower. Make no mistake, Daniel is far from a grieving lover. He's a sick killer whose grief and obsession led him to deal with the devil, reviving centuries of trauma for Boro, Akka, Sachi, and himself. I like how his Chuni tendencies slowly fade as Joaquin eats away at his confidence, and though I don't think he deserves forgiveness for the sins he's committed, coming to realize the error of his ways was a good direction to take him in. Like the others, he couldn't move on, but his way of dealing with things was just so much worse. Uh-oh, it's everyone's favorite MILF! LaFave is the breadwinner of her family and has deep ambitions to become a branch head. She's caring towards her family and intelligent enough to make a decent plan with Elpathion to kill Evenkel. She would have succeeded if not for Hockney literally being able to see the future. She may seem like a meme, but she's already proven herself to be a fun and adaptable character. Also, she's hot, so that puts her above Akka. Yule is smarter than he looks, and we may not know the extent of his plans for a long time. After defeating one of the Aeon family's most talented regulars, he goes straight to fighting an actual irregular. Are his antics really just due to his mania, or is he hiding a much more calculating personality underneath? His use of stealth and the snake spell certainly imply there's a lot under the hood when it comes to him. Though the cage surely leaves much to be desired, it did have a couple of high points. Kanzan and his conflict with Gato is my favorite part of the arc, and the resilience and loyalty he shows do a great job subverting his villainous introduction. We thought he was consumed by pride and status, but he genuinely cared for his people. The shock he feels at Gato's betrayal and the bond he shares with his daughter humanize him and make him one of the most developed characters of the cage. Even though he comes off as a smug asshole, Lyra Rowe hides a cynicism under his professionalism and isn't afraid to challenge authority. I really like that instead of just rebelling against the Empire or hiding away, he journeyed with Quant to Wolhike Song to seek greater truths. It's a conviction not made in haste, and a very respectable one compared to many other character motivations. He was able to reflect on the situation of Season 1 and learn from it, and I hope we see him discover some of the answers he's searching for. Like Lily, all but hotter. There are actually a couple of things that make her more enjoyable than her sister. She gives off a more dangerous and thoughtful aura as she threatens Hatsu and Shibisu, and she has the better fight by a sizable margin. I'm absolutely looking forward to a rematch with Hatsu down the line. Rowan ties together Boro, Sachi, Akka, and Daniel beautifully. She's not the most complex. She loves Daniel because he helped her hide a body, but she is endearing in her optimism, which fades away under her paranoia. Though her dynamic is primarily with Daniel, it's easy to see why Boro and Pels cared about her, and it's pretty satisfying to see her regain her courage as she faces Joaquin at the end of her journey. Augustus mixes casual chicken banner with insidious cunning like nobody's business. His absolute drip and wacky art style aside, he's got a way with words and can easily placate the volatile love. Even though his reasoning was complete bullshit to anyone above the age of 5, I have to respect how Gus patronized the absolute shit out of him and forced to come to the nest. The reveal that he planned out everything on the 20th floor was also fantastic. Able to thrash rankers with ease, he attacks almost like an artist, stroking his brush across a canvas. The Simp King has arrived. I love this guy. Never before has a knight professing to protect women failed so spectacularly at every chance. Despite Yura putting even an ounce of faith in him, he failed to hold his own against Boro. It's honestly hilarious to watch him struggle, but I also genuinely enjoy his devotion, and he gives a lot of credence to the idea that there is something worth caring about inside of Yura. Anak Sr. is the biggest reason Anak Jr. is so compelling. She was one of the earlier princesses to rebel, leave behind the riches of status and royalty, and the only one to actually fall in love. She gives us a reason to believe being a princess is a burden and not a gift, and her affection for her daughter makes her all the more endearing. She's a great mother. Gato is by far the best part of the cage. He subverts our expectation that he's Yama's reasonable servant and Deng Deng's supportive father, proving himself to be a cruel and treacherous man with no love for his boss or his fake son. His motives are the most understandable of anyone in the cage, but his love extends only to Louis and the subjugated classes in the cage. It's easy to see the disdain he feels for other combat dogs and their mindless pursuit of strength. Her has an 8 on IMDb. This means Traveler is supremely underrated. Who doesn't enjoy a good love story? Whether it's love or obsession, he's devoted to saving Emily and learning the truth about her. And I love that he fits into Rachel's team as the one apologetic and generally good guy who's just strung along for the ride. Honestly, he could even be a pretty good protagonist for an arc or two. Zsa Zsa might not look like much besides a flavor companion for the teams, but she hides a surprising depth behind her expressions and dialogue. She's self-centered, but it's clear it comes from a place of desperation as she tries to save her species. She's host to an insane resolve and fanaticism that allows her to control the hand of Arlene, but when Bond finally breaks out, she's quick to make the pragmatic choice and switch sides. There's no better team player than Opathion, or as Google Drive autocorrect calls him, Palpation. He's the best light bearer we've seen. He's the undisputed king of T-posing, and he's a profoundly loyal subordinate to Caliban. Perhaps even a friend. It's hard to say even he's a villain in Zahard's army when he's nothing but protective and reasonable when fighting people. His death scene is one of the best in the story. The Lopo Bia family is sadistic, and Ren is no exception. The way he viciously toys with Anak and Andrasi easily makes him one of Season 1's most engaging antagonists. While Han Sung is intriguing, Ren is despicable, but it's also awesome to see his power compared to the regulars. He shows us just how much regulars are at the mercy of rankers at the end of the day. We're just lucky he got his justice thanks to Yuri. Michael's delightful maliciousness is the most fun element of the early Cage. He was always a bit spooky ever since he murdered Gyatang and revealed himself as a menace, but his resentment of Aguero and understanding of Rachel's feelings add depth to his antagonism. But of course I just put him aside because of the giant syringe. Who knew a being based off of hatred could be so goddamn lovable? It's easy to view this Waclone as a plot contrivance, but she provides effective closure to Daniel and acts as a counter to Hakeem. Her transference of souls to Bomb is her way of getting revenge on the man who slaughtered her in the past, and it's clear that her playful smile masks a deep, seething resentment. She spends the better part of her existence hiding from Hakeem, and I think it's quite tragic that a being so desperate for freedom had to sacrifice herself to ensure her savior could carry on. I wasn't actually going to even include Horacha in this list since I planned to come out with this video before the chapter was released and he just wasn't ranking at that point, but my goodness, his backstory hits. SIU shows us, slowly, how a decent ranker is slowly corrupted, taken advantage of, and ultimately obliterated. We get to see in just 2 chapters his love, his hatred, his regret, and his deepest desires. He has nothing left to live for now but his squad after forsaking his people. He became too different and chose the path of a monster. His story is not necessarily the most sympathetic, but it is one of Tower of God's most tragic and understandable, and it really propels him on this list. Evan is a fearful man. Charged with guiding a dangerous princess who never listens, things luckily work out for him. But it doesn't stop him from seeing the danger ahead. To him, there are threats everywhere, and even Yuri's goal to protect Bomb is a threat in and of itself. To him, Bomb is a monster. You can see him try to guide her away from him. You can see him fear his growth and consider snuffing it out in the floor of death. And I'm waiting to see if he can overcome his fear of Bomb, or if he'll go behind Yuri's back and do something darker. Yusracha is an absolute demon. Whether he's capturing other species, engaging in mind control, or toying with his prey, he's one of Tower of God's most sinister villains yet. He holds a lot of interesting secrets about the Houndborn, the Lopo Bia family, and the Workshop's research. And even though he still hasn't seen a lot of comparative screen time, the amount of destruction and manipulation he engages in adds infinite tension to the story. Mashani is another mysterious antagonist, who always keeps her cool above an uncontrollable bloodlust. The way she can keep Yuri at bay speaks volumes of her power and intelligence, and she seemed to always come out on top no matter how bad things look in her current battle. She's been able to orchestrate the nest and coordinate multiple army commanders, but I'm much more excited to see what she offers in the future. Her conflict with the other princesses and desire to collect Yuri's weapons will undoubtedly cause a catastrophic war, and she's already been manipulating other princesses since the Name Hunt station. Oh man, Prince. This poor guy. Prince had fantastic growth throughout his time in the story. He went from an embarrassing, entitled brat to a true friend and worthy support for his team. He went through a lot to continue training and connect with Missang and learned a lot about his own maturity level. He could have been utilized better in Dollar Show, but even with the 20th floor, workshop, and Wangnan arcs, there's still plenty of great Prince scenes that bring him into his niche in Sweet and Sour. Hell-Jo was more than just an obstacle on the floor of death. He was a cautionary tale for Bomb, of forgetting oneself and giving into power. He became ruled by it and stagnated. He was a soul who sought to guide his people beyond a curse and free them, but became trapped by it himself. Though petty and bitter, the insufficiency of his power to win his people showed how trapped he was and how alone he felt. The only person who truly believed in him was floors away, and could never understand his struggle. He is a sad shell of a man who was lucky enough to be reborn and given a second chance. Yeah, fuck you, he's nowhere near my top 10. His only match in Devolution is Andrasi. Aguero is a complex character made simple through his guiding devotion to Bomb. He has big dreams and desires greatness not through his strength, but his cunning. He lacks the power most Khunds are granted. He's no prodigy, but he's hungry, and his inferiority complex fuels his growth as he outmaneuvers all his rivals and continuously attempts to prove his superiority to Rachel. He thinks she's a monster, but the reality is he's just as bad, and his cruelty towards her and others is cause for alarm to all but his closest friends. There are so many interesting avenues to explore with Aguero, his familiar relationships and enmity with Rachel, and I pray every week for SIU to look back at those and push him past his obsession. Sass Queen. A lot of people love her for her looks, and some hate her for how flat a character she is. I think there's a lot to her though, especially what she hides underneath her dry humor. As someone who can see the future and knows even the moment of her own death, it's clear that Hua Ryun has to suppress her emotions and follow her path. This raises a lot of questions over what she truly wants, but it also lets us see who she guides based on her advice. Whether it's Bomb, Wangnan, Aguero, or Rachel, I'm always curious to see what her grand plan is. I really hope she gets her own arc in the future. Quant is the perfect ranker competition. He's utilized masterfully in hide and seek and helps illustrate the childishness that can come with absolute power. To regulars, he's a physical god. However, his position has made him volatile and complacent, worried about his pride. He's easily manipulated by others, and Khun masterfully exploits him to his own advantage. He's a joy to watch as he gloats and scrambles around, and is one of the comic's funniest characters. Reflejo is a bitter, tragic husk. He's a man with the cruelty of the Empire burned into his eyes and spent the rest of his life trying to clear the image from his sight by serving FUG. In a frenetic, bombastic workshop battle, Reflejo is the complete antithesis. He's patient and quiet until he's down to the wire. His darkness completely contrasts his vivid environment as he hides away in his cave, like he takes us into a different world. Not only does he push Bomb's team to the limit in a fantastic fight, but he also shows Bomb the depths of the despair that the people who rely on him bathe in. I actually didn't like Inieda on my first read. I thought he was just another brick wall in the way, and it annoyed me that he denied us a good Iraq fight. On the surface, he has no real connection to other characters, but learning of his heritage and his inferiority complex helps tie his story together with other talented disappointments, such as Kaiser and Yiwa. His fight with Rand is a great fight, but it's the classic struggle between the bastard underdog and the pureblood prodigy. Nobody loves Boro like I do. Well, that's true for most of this list, but Boro is one of the best mentors we could have gotten for the Hell Train. He's got skin in the game with Joaquin. His stoic exterior hides how much he bottles up his grief, and he glues himself to the train looking for a way to atone for Rowan's sacrifice. He's Tower of God's best-written sensei. He taught Bomb's crew to deal with the train, and in return grew and helped his comrades move on with their lives. Lurker is one of the most vile entities in the Tower. He has embraced the violence of the Tower and resents every second of his meager life. He hates the very idea of innocence and desires all around him to share in his misery. To him, everyone who can climb the tower with a smile is nothing more than a hypocrite, and he perfectly cements the idea that people who have climbed high enough are not the people you see on the floor of tests. They're desperate and broken. He pushes Wang Nan to the limit and is the perfect character to make an example out of Wang Nan's resilience. He is one of the tower's best antagonists. Mata is the best one-scene wonder on this list. Though the Floor of Death arc has its ups and downs, Mata's confession to Hockney is the emotional highlight of its ending. We see such sincerity in his friendship, and beneath it all, a self-loathing. He demonstrates the despair of the Floor, dreaming of freedom but being too scared to attain it. It's exactly what overtook the Dajaz and the Floor Dwellers and what Zhou tried and failed to fight. Though his lost memories will give him another chance to achieve freedom, I have to mourn the memories that were always too afraid to reach for greener pastures. Well, this is the protagonist. Interesting guy, super interesting development. Always being pushed and used by others, hardly getting the time to process the situation around him and figure out what he truly believes. He spends so much time on the train discovering his true self, pushing himself to oppose Joaquin and save everyone, only to be forced to choose favorites later and focus instead on saving only those he cares about, and then saving everyone anyway because he has a special arrow. How much agency does he truly have? How much of his path is merely fate? How far can the tower push him, and how much will he sacrifice along the way? SIU, do not let us down. A cryptic character perfectly sets up the grand mystery of the tower. He gives Baum exactly what he needs to continue. He plays Yuri like a fiddle. He breaks Rachel down and sets her on a path of tragedy. He is the spirit that tempts the desperate and hungry into a world of strife, and we don't know why. For all of the life, death, inventions, castles, and kingdoms created in the tower, a timeless structure provided the bedrock for it all, and Hedon himself is the voice of that structure. Hedon is the true will of the tower. I knew the cage was going to be a shit arc the second I saw SIU bring that dumb fucking animal Varagarth back instead of this badass. Buelsar Elliot is the true essence of the Mad Dog. He's a dynamic and entertaining presence who steals every scene he's in with his biting sarcasm and insatiable appetite for action. Like his partner Angel, he's a bit unhinged, and he only cares about having a good time in his fights. This guy only knows how to crack wise and bisect people. Barrow comes for his ass looking for revenge for the first guy he chopped in half, and he just fucking smiles and says, hey, maybe I shouldn't have chopped him in half. And then he chops another guy in half in the next fight. He is the lifeblood of the Mad Dogs, gives us good information on Yama's mindset, and acts as one of Baum's most entertaining roadblocks. SIU, bring him back. Urek is freedom incarnate. A bastion of inner strength and competence, he represents an impossible peak of self-actualization. He treats regulars as his own equals and firmly sets himself apart from other family heads. Though he uses it liberally, power is just a means to an end for him. He desires freedom, and though he is naive and irresponsible, wants to share his vision and happiness with others. He is truly an act for Baum to follow, but their circumstances and difference in power is the foundation of potential conflict. He also has, by any standard, the absolute best introduction in the webtoon. No entrance is more electrifying than his own. Paracool is a caricature of what the tower is like. Where Season 1 introduces so many characters with complex motivations, grounding their cruelty in deceit, Paracool transcends these niceties and shows us simply what lies in the heart of every regular: desperation, selfishness, and cowardice. Along with being the best comic relief in the tower, sorry Rack, he's the much-needed simplicity to counterbalance the nuance in other characters and make them feel even more developed. Anak is main character material. In Season 1, she's one of the most compelling characters, with a unique design and a backstory that supports Han Sung's explanation on removing dangerous elements. Her beef with the princesses sets her up for conflict the whole way up the tower, and the anger and shame from her childhood motivate her aggressive fighting style. She's stubborn and rash, but that makes her one of the most determined regulars in the tower. I hope SIU remembers her. Dawan haters, sit down. Dawan is one of SIU's best characters, showing the despair that follows a failed rebellion. Whereas we're only starting the story of Baum's new war, Dawan has already seen the end of her own, understanding the futility and suffering that awaits. Her sealing made no difference, and she awoke to a weak and uncaring people. Knowing that fighting is pointless, and her sacrifice brought nobody closer to happiness, how could we blame her for wanting just enough happiness and stability to save herself? Serena personifies the desperation in the average regular. She finds companionship in Ho and Shibizu, two of the other weakest people on the floor, but can't grow fast enough to keep up with either. She comes to realize her own jealousy and pettiness and seeks to grow beyond it. She has an incredible realization. What she sought doesn't need to be found at the top of the tower. She has friends, resolve, and thriftiness to get her by in life. If you've seen my Missang video, you know how great I think her journey is. She is one of the most natural progressions in the story, and you can see how the shit she's gone through changes her over time. She learns to be more self-reliant and helps reassure other characters the way she herself needed so much reassurance earlier in the story. She's really grown up over time in an endearing way. Alright boys, we have officially entered the Quababa tier. Though his time in the story is short, his presence is phenomenal. Hworyang and Arcraptor both start off as stoic, masculine men, but it's clear there's more going on under the hood. His devil ignition is quick to show he has a heart beneath the coat, and his other powers make him interesting and versatile as a fighter. But it's the familial bond between Sweet and Sour and Kasano with him that makes him so amazing. After feeling so alone in the workshop, he's wandered the tower looking for family, and found it with Wangnan, Prince, and Goseng. He even tries to save Kasano and kicks off the hand of Arlene arc, the greatest arc in the series, but unfortunately just isn't strong enough to bring him over to his side. He's an unsung hero in this story who deserves to wake up again and climb with his companions. If you want to know why I love Caliban, I've got a nice long video where you can hear all about it. He's one of the only people in the story who's effectively criticized Bomb, put multiple Slayers in their places, and even gets Dawan to forget who Cha is for half an arc. His visions of peace are grand, his quiet charisma is unmatchable, and he's one of Tower of God's best villains. Honestly, maybe it's because SIU never gives Rak anything to do that keeps him so high up. Most readers think of Rak as simple comic relief, but the fact is Rak is simple, consistent, and often poignant. Khun Bomb shippers will be surprised to learn their blue-haired bottom has better chemistry with an alligator than the main character. He's always been able to motivate both Khun and Bomb, and is never afraid to call Khun out and bring him back when he's meandering. Rak is funny, strong, and confident, and is the closest thing Team Bomb can get to antidepressants. Welcome to the villain stretch. It's just a bunch of villains, and the worst of the best is Ragwell, that sadistic, vengeful angel of death. Her obsession with physical appearance is rooted in her trauma from what she and her mother went through. Her hatred is one of the tower's most raw, and her energy is visceral. It doesn't hurt that most of her action occurs at the peak of Tower of God's art. She mauls Hworyun, she gets Yiwa to her limit, and perfectly brings out the malice of the great families. This is not Data Zahard. This is not the kid in the basketball shorts. This is the king of the tower, and his reveal at the end of the Hidden Floor changed the game for our perspective of him. There is so much mystery now concerning his true goals, but his atmosphere is oppressive, and it's clear that what he wants to achieve transcends any appeal. His own past self utterly fails to convince him. He is omnipotent yet calm. His network is incredibly vast, and his system is set up so that all who climb the tower are eventually corrupted, fighting amongst themselves so that they may never come together to surpass him. Even with only a single appearance outside of flashbacks, his presence is felt from the very first chapter of the story. Pre-White Joaquin is a different beast. He is probably the best straight-up villain in Tower of God. He is the lifeblood of the first half of the Hell Train. His philosophy is evil and vicious. He will traumatize you and eat your soul. He turns his arc into a survival horror game and brings out the best in Bomb by allowing him to think for himself and understand how cruel his foe is. He turns Bomb into a more understandable protagonist while pressing everyone else under his thumb. He deals with demons, kills his siblings, and destroys everything he touches. SIU, with Joaquin, created the devil. Do not be fooled by his Season 3 antics, for as of this latest chapter, Han Sung is confirmed to still be a Machiavellian mastermind. He's the orchestrator of Season 1, a cynical pragmatist who does whatever he wants to the regulars around him in pursuit of his goal. Rankers scramble with a wave of his finger. He puts Bomb through terrible abuse and creates Juvio grace. He wields total power over Rachel's decisions. Though it's easy to see him as a wise and energetic mentor nowadays, we must never forget what he's truly capable of. The betrayal of Ho is where Tower of God truly begins. We learn through him that people envy and resent Bomb's power, and that it was naive of us to expect a smooth climb with the power of teamwork. This will be a story of deceit, jealousy, revenge, and violence. The build of his anguish is incredible, and his stress limits him and causes him to lash out. With his life in the tower all but forfeit, he tries to get revenge on the tower itself by destroying the person it did choose instead of him. Topping off the villain stretch is Karika. one of the most single-minded and pragmatic characters in the series. He's also definitely the unluckiest. Workshop? Thorn unravels early. Name Hunt? Fucked by Frogfisher. Floor of Death? Urek. Hidden Floor? Master Key. Magic Armor? Magic Bullets from Garum. This guy just cannot win. I remember hating it first when Karaka decided it wasn't worth fighting Bomb anymore, but think about it. What else can he do? Now that he's going with the flow, things have actually been quite a bit better for him. Even if he gets embarrassed, and even if he's at his most authoritative as an antagonist, he's still always choosing to play as smart as he can with what he's given. Since he doesn't trust Bomb to do anything right, it's up to him to cover the rest of the bases himself. Best Dad R. Crafter has a beautifully developed character, and does everything he can to right his wrongs. As the loser of Horiang's Battle of Wills in the Untrustworthy Room, he already surpasses him in terms of soft interiors, and quickly shows how compassionate he is deep down. His deadpan demeanor masks how deeply he cares about the people around him, whether he's fretting over Horiang's departure, getting Prince to man up, or sitting outside Miseng's room. Sweet and Sour is more a family than an effective team, and after losing his first family, it's only natural for him to want to do anything to protect his second. We have just ascended past Quababa tier and entered the tier of all-time greatness. No character inspires as much analysis and discussion in Tower of God than Rachel herself. No one truly knows what secrets she's hiding about the outside or how she feels about her journey. No one knows how she climbs while seeming so useless, but she always manages to come out ahead. She's incredibly skilled at figuring people out and using their desires to her advantage. She can manipulate Bomb, Aguero, Casino, and even Joaquin to play into her hands. As someone who's been used since the moment she entered the tower, her cynical tactics are the only way she knows how to climb. She's jealous, spiteful, and weak, but also comforting and talkative, and she's even managed to get the better of Andrasi in their last debate. I always wondered how she would act if Hedon and Hansung hadn't broken her down and made her an accomplice to their larger plans. Would she really have been so cruel? Or is she just conditioned into believing there was really no other way? I'd honestly take her all the way to the number 2 spot here, but Hidden Floor really actually just butchers her character that badly. I didn't like Yua that much on my first read. I thought she was annoying and unsympathetic. But after I reread, I noticed how fantastic her character development is and how she gets more comfortable working with her teammates. She works through her elitism and takes on more responsibility as she comes to understand her position as a prodigy within the 10 great families. She wants to make herself useful, to carry her team and climb with people that make her feel comfortable and in control using her power. She provides great comic relief, but also has amazing dynamics with Bomb, Wangnan, Huariyun, and even Rak. The more time she spends with her team, the better she learns to use her power, and her journey has amazing potential to uncover more truths about the history and misdeeds of the 10 great families, and gives her a chance to right the wrongs along the way. Bring her back, SIU. Bring her out of jail right now. I know this is going to be a controversial opinion, but Yura is SIU's most versatile character, and my favorite antagonist. Cruel, beautiful, and talented on the outside, yet lonely, vengeful, and dejected in her heart. She is focused and dynamic, respecting Joaquin's brutality, threatening to murder Wangnan and even Miseng, and holding a piece of Hockney's soul hostage for his cooperation. But at the end of it all, she just wants people to genuinely love her. Her family wants to kill her. She resents her fans who don't understand her. Her brother wants to steal her body. She clings to Rachel, who promised she could give her what she wanted before they even met. She even covers for her in front of Karaka. Even as she's a sadistic menace to anyone who opposes her, she's sweet and encouraging to her team and seems to get along well with all of them. The Hidden Floor puts tension between her and Rachel, and it's here that we can see how pitiful she truly is. Seeing Rachel put her new body over Yura's feelings and conflict cements the fact that nobody really loves her. We can understand why she's so cruel and mean. If nobody ever cared about her in the first place, how could we ever expect her to be any better to other people? There is no one I respect more in Tower of God than Shibizu. He resonates with me more than any other character. In a world of killers and monsters, Shibizu develops from an unremarkable regular messing with forces completely out of his league into a capable and effective leader, commanding an army of rogue princesses, wasp men, and octopi tamers up the tower faster than any team we know. He begins his journey as an underdog, even more so than Rachel without any irregularity, struggling to pass the simplest of barrier tests. Yet by the workshop battle, he has developed his team into a cohesive unit, becoming an exceptional scout in the process. More importantly, he has done all of this while maintaining his humanity. Unlike so many people in the tower who willingly sacrifice their humanity and empathy for power, Shibizu uses his own as a strength, binding his team together and allowing individual members to excel in their fields instead of simply using his teammates to propel him forward in the way that other leaders such as Rachel might use theirs. In such a morally gray tower, where even core protagonists may act callously for the sake of their goals, he is a refreshing and optimistic presence who shows us that, contrary to popular belief, it is possible to climb the tower while remaining a good person, even without overwhelming power at your fingertips. He tells Aguero in Season 1 that people took what was important to him, but I don't think that's true. He's proven time and again that even in such a merciless tower, he still has plenty to care about, and he defends it with everything he's got. Now before we get to that super secret number 1 pick, I want to give a couple of honorable mentions that just were not in the tier list that I was going through when I made this. The first one is Muntari. I like Muntari. He would probably be in, like, between 70 and 80. Dutong is the next one. Woof, woof, woof. He's between 90 and 100. Finally, you guys already know, we gotta put Battis in here somehow. I have no idea how the guy that made the list excluded Battis. Battis would probably be in the top 40, so he'd probably be between 30 and 40. I'd probably put him a little bit further ahead than Haracha. Finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. I mean, come on, guys, who did you think number 1 was gonna be? Frog Pollock forever, baby! But for real, the only reason my channel isn't just Wangnan analysis videos only is because I'm just not good enough to do him justice yet. He is one of my favorite fictional characters and is an incredible foil to Bomb. Bomb is a hero who is granted unfathomable power, yet focuses on the road ahead and keeps his perspective narrow. Wangnan has grand ambitions and incredible visions for the world he wants to shape, but lacks the smallest fraction of power necessary to achieve his dreams. Like Shibizu, he gets by on incredible charisma and pseudo-immortality, I guess too, but he shows us the price that must be paid trying to climb the tower while maintaining those big dreams of his. People call him a generic shonen protagonist, but my god, he suffers like none of them do. No Wangnan scene is wasted, and SIU is not afraid to make him lose hard. Unlike so many characters in this story, his stupid decisions bring dire consequences, and his pivotal moments hold so much more weight for it. His guilt isn't just a one-and-done thing. We can see it hang over him through the story. Rachel and Lurker both push him to the brink, but his emotional resilience is incredible. Even when he wants to get revenge on Rachel and can't forgive her as easily as Lurker, he still tries his best to cooperate when it's practical. He knows how hard it is to stay a good person, but he doesn't sacrifice his principles. He holds on to his ideals through every bit of suffering, and tries his best to follow through on his promises. The fact that he actually goes back for Horiang, something Bomb never even thinks about, cements him as one of the tower's most compassionate people. And though the sword he carries threatens to drag him down a path of corruption, he won't succumb to its temptations so easily. Nobody's close to a saint in the tower, but if anyone can create a wider sky at the top, it's our golden boy. Woo, that was a big one, but I am glad we got through it. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you actually made it the whole way through. Pop quiz, guys, who's number 37.5. Again, let me see those top 100 of yours in the comments, and I hope you guys did well with the predictions too if you decided to participate in that. Hope to see a lot of Wangnans at number 1. You can see my profile picture at least. For anyone who is concerned as to why our favorite regular princess was not in this top 100 list, you'll be very excited to see the next analysis video and find out why, so look forward to that. And again, I am so incredibly grateful for all the support that you guys show on these videos. I love bringing you guys this content. I know I don't get the analyses out as frequently as I keep saying I will, but I still love to do them, and I still love to bring them to you. So please stay tuned and keep watching that. As this channel continues to grow, I assume it will, I am probably going to start branching out into a couple of other webtoons, namely Kubera and Unordinary. Both very much worth analyzing in their own right in very, very, very different ways. But for the time being, we are still a solely Tower of God focused channel, so if you guys are really aching to see another Tower of God character or arc or anything like that analyzed next, let me know in the comments as well, because I would love to do something upon popular request. Andrasi is next, but after that, the board is clear. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Join the Discord for more base Tower of God discussion, and I will see you on the next one.